Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast, helping higher education marketing leaders share knowledge about learning, strategies, and tactics that are relevant today. See what you can learn today by listening to one of our episodes.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast, hosted by Concept 3D. A little bit about Concept 3D. We have helped bring your campus to life virtually. We have served the higher education community for over a decade with our award-winning interactive maps and virtual tours. Improve your campus communications, student engagement, and recruitment with our powerful location-based virtual solutions. My name is Shiro, and I will be your host today. I'm currently the Director of Demand Gen at Concept 3D, and I'm actually speaking from our office in Denver. And we have this cool little podcast room, which is why the background's a little different. Today, I'm super excited to have Tom Voller-Berdan join us today. Tom is a higher education leader with decades of experience, specifically in admissions and marketing. Tom, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've been following your podcast and really enjoying the experts you've had so far. So hopefully I can live up to that bar. Amazing.
And before we jump in, why don't you start us off with one fun fact?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's gardening season. So I was late to the game in buying a house. And when I did about 16 years ago, I was surrounded by gardeners. So I've really enjoy getting out and getting my fingers dirty and planting plants. And I've really had a great time doing that.
That's amazing. So I'm in Colorado, and I feel like the weather's starting to turn a little bit more into fall now. What's it like over there?
I've seen a little color in the maples.
Yeah.
I was just talking to somebody on campus here too, and September's a great gardening season also if you have the right plants in the ground. So I'm looking forward to September. And then, here in Minnesota, we drop down pretty quickly after that.
Amazing. Got it. So on our previous call, I know we talked a lot about higher education, admissions, and marketing. And one thing that really stuck out to me was, how to stick out in a crowded marketplace. I think that's one pain point that, was an overall theme of all those smaller subjects we talked about. And I know within that, you brought up an interesting point around secret shopping and how that relates to communications with students or students' journey into researching for schools. Do you mind telling us a little bit more about what you mean by secret shopping in higher ed, as well as how we can also combat that?
Yeah, well, and this is nothing new. We've been secret shopping each other for years, right? I'm sure I'm on a lot of colleges' lists around the country too. We did 3 consecutive years of it, learning a little bit as we went. We could probably use a 4th or 5th year to learn even more about the data collection. In our case, I was really trying to benchmark our work against other institutions. And in the latest round, we went with 32 colleges, mostly Midwest, pretty much all the Minnesota private colleges, and then a lot of the large flagship institutions. In our case, we went to the website, track down the inquiry form, sometimes harder than other places. Mm-hmm. One college had no way to fill out the form or request information online. Then we tracked email, print, text, and phone calls. And in the end, we spent a lot more, and we had 4 or 5 test students with different academic backgrounds, different interests. And, when we got inundated with the email, we really decided just to focus on one. When I found out, this is not surprising. And simultaneously, my daughter was going through her college search. And a lot of us been through this. The stuff comes in the mail, and if you don't have brand name, brand recognition, you don't get much viewership, and it's a real big challenge. There's, if you're a highly selective liberal arts college or a flagship institution, that name against, whatever color you have in your school means a lot. For the rest of us, we really fight an upward battle to break through that clutter.
Right. And what are some of the ways that you're using this as sort of secret shopping research to empower yourselves to hopefully drive more business outcomes?
Yeah, well, and I know you and I talked about this earlier. One of the things in this case, we previously broke it into the emails into three categories. We added a fourth, actually, and of course I tried to get them all to start with P, so you have to bear with me. There was four categories. One was process, which is simply the you can apply, you can visit, we have scholarships with no real minimal sales pitch, if anything. Then the second level was promotional, and that was general branding messages that went to probably every student. And then we got into this third and fourth. We originally had this category called personal, which really just encompassed anything that spoke directly to a student's interests that they had disclosed. This time around, we actually added another category called personal, and personalized. So personalized really was the former category. You're interested in history, you got something about the history department. Personal was some sort of outreach that clearly indicated that it was a one-to-one communication, meaningful, authentic, personal outreach, which I know we can do a pretty good job of faking in our emails.
Right.
And it's a real challenge. But if you did a good enough job to fake us, then we listed it as personal. And I did that in part because I've seen research. In this case, it was niche and tutor consultants that had done a large research project showing the importance of this personal and personalized outreach, with students saying that, I think it was close to 80% of students saying it was really important for them in their decision making, and only 16 or 15% reported that they had actually received it. In one case, we had one college that only sent process emails. And it got to the point when I was going through them that I was sort of hoping that they wouldn't send anything else, because I wanted to go for 100% on them. We had one college that sent, in 1 year, they sent 193 emails. And that was March through March. Last I looked, they were still sending our students these emails, most of them process, letting them know they can apply, but not telling them why they should apply. One of the other things I found as I toured colleges with my daughter, we were on probably about 25 college campuses, is I got done with that experience, and I mentioned to my wife, who's actually a director of college counseling, I said, I could really give the presentation at every one of those colleges. And these were really highly selective brand name colleges, but it turns out that we all offer a pretty darn good high quality product with a lot of the same offerings. And so even during the campus visit, how do you differentiate yourself? How do you make yourself distinct? And by distinct, I mean relatively rare and pretty highly attractive. It can be rare and not attractive, and it can be attractive and not rare, right? But
Right.
how do you bring those two together?
Got it. Was there one thing that really stuck out in terms of like an opportunity you saw after you visited the 25 colleges? I know you're saying making yourself different, like standing out, but what would be some examples of that?
Yeah, well, we added the challenge of touring during COVID, right?
Right.
We walked around campus, probably didn't go in any buildings, and we got done, and my daughter said, "That's the college for me." And I thought, "Oh, okay." But I would say the college she chose does have a lot of distinctions, and so it really wasn't relying as much on promotion as it was on product, which I think was really helpful. In the outreach experience, even for my daughter, I saw that if there was some meaningful personal outreach, I want to give a hats off to Luther College in Decorah, Iowa. they just did a fantastic job of having an alum we know reach out to her, refer her, and then their follow-up after the referral was just remarkable. Really celebrating this referral. And, my daughter's not ending up in Decorah, Iowa, but I got to imagine
left an
that was
impact with you.
pretty impressive, yeah.
That's amazing. So they were, going back to what your 4 Ps now instead of the 3
Yeah.
Ps. They were hitting all the Ps. They had the process and promotional aspect, which is the first 2, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Yeah.
But they really got personalized, and even to the personal point where it's a one-on-one communication.
Right.
And they were hitting all those buckets.
Yeah. And for many colleges, colleges like mine and colleges like Luther, we're dealing in numbers, but we're really at the level we're dealing with really individual people. And one of the things I keep wondering is, do we start looking more at quality experience over quantity? A lot of these colleges, with my daughter, they were colleges from hundreds and thousands of miles away that have absolutely no brand recognition, sending the same thing to everybody, and hoping that they're going to get this needle in the haystack. And instead, can you transform your outreach to do this really personalized and personal outreach as a key part of it? They'll get the facts, the process thing. Everybody wants to put right on their main page, apply, the big button apply, and if it's flashing, that's even better. And what I would rather do is have the student so interested that they would dig for a day and a half to find the apply button. Of course, we want both, right? We want process and the distinction. But let's make more students more interested.
Love that. Yeah. In terms of, you mentioned a website as well. Do you think that we can do a better job with the website journeys in creating an experience that leads people in the right direction? I'm kind of looking towards more like non-higher ed communities, right? I feel like, let's talk about Amazon. Amazon does a good job with their internet and e-commerce experience. Yeah. Do you think there's things we can learn from other industries to help create a better journey on the website that's not just driving force to one thing?
Yeah, maybe there's a hierarchy there also, and I know there's a lot of focus on usability of a website, and clearly usability is important, but in our hierarchy here, it's the low level. That's giving them our audience what they're looking for. The big question in all of this is, how are you giving them more, and hopefully way more than they expected? So in your web, when you get there, talking about the experience of Concept 3D is hey, I don't want to go and learn about the place. I want to go and engage the place. I want to experience the place. So how is your web with multimedia making that happen? When you visit campus, there are all sorts of colleges that do interesting things, and in fact, we have a brand new president on campus, and he was talking to some of our staff the other day during a program, and they were getting ready to hand out water to our visitors as they got off our bus. And I was kind of running up there because I'm going to get a picture of him handing out water to our visitors. Well, he had to run off to another meeting, so that wasn't an option. But can you get off the bus and you do that? We had one time where we were walking around campus with our daughter, and this was actually a few years ago, and you had that experience where you had that professor stop, in the unexpected, and actually take us in to his lab to see the lab. And so, how are we giving them more when they visit? How are we giving more during the initial outreach? We're not really setting the bar high enough, I think, in that regard. Part of it is, what story do we have, but how do we tell the story? And pretty pictures, nice prose, well-designed publications, are play a role, but they in of themselves, everybody's. I got a lot of that stuff in the mail from my daughter.
Mm-hmm. Did you see? I know you mentioned in terms of follow up, you mentioned 2 schools out of the 25 that did a really good follow up process. But even before that, did you see some schools really doing exceptional storytelling? Even before that helped. Like what ultimately made your daughter apply to those 25 schools? Is there one school that did the storytelling really well?
Yeah, well, she was a brand name shopper, and so in their case, it was the rankings and and the reputation. I believe, I really firmly believe colleges like that have it pretty good, pretty easy. They could probably just ignore her and get what they wanted to get. One of the things I did see that I thought stuck out was Hobart and William Smith colleges. About every week they would send the campus just an email with the campus and photos, and there really wouldn't be text, but they were telling the story in such a way, like Instagram would share the story. They have seem to have a really good photographer or photographers, and there was just some I thought emotionally charged, moving photos that quickly told the story. That was one that I thought stood out for me.
Amazing.
St. Olaf College did a really interesting piece, I thought, and my daughter actually applied there and really also did love the piece. And in their case, they told the story through the campus mailboxes. We always have those campus mailboxes with our little code that we got to go into, and they had pictures, and you could open each one and find out what the mail was. And very minimal text, engaging, not cheap to do, but it's definitely stood out.
Gotcha. And I'm just curious, was your daughter looking into like virtual engagement before did you actually physically visit all those 25 schools?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot.
Yeah,
Was there anything she did before that to pre-qualify them? I'm hearing virtual chat a lot more. I'm hearing virtual events, obviously virtual tours as well. Did she engage in any of those activities prior as well before visiting on campus?
My daughter has her own mind, so she does what she's going to do, right?
Right.
But partly, I think it was this result of COVID is that we're all going to do more of these virtual experiences. We're not going to let them go post-COVID. So there were certainly a lot of opportunities, and she did take the opportunity to get.
I guess
involved.
I should ask you, what is your position on this?
What's that?
Around keeping these solutions, these virtual engagement solutions? What is your position and thought there?
Early, I think you have to have a little lower expectation, and that's what I found in our case with the online webinar events. If in our case, if you go into it expecting that you're going to serve 35 students to talk about history, we're just not going to get it. But I think of it as a bit of a campus visit experience, and how much time and effort we're putting into that. And I'm close with the chair of the history department, and he's just does wonderful things. And he and I, really just decided, if we have 1 or 2 students, let's do it. Well, and we have to. The effort has to somehow match the outcome and the benefit. So we're probably not going to round up 4 or 5 alums and 4 students and have one prospective student show up. The other thing I've been doing more of, and perhaps other colleges have been doing this too, is finding ways to leverage events that are otherwise going to happen on campus. So if you're having a theater presentation or a theater show, perhaps before that you have an opportunity to go down into the rehearsal or dressing room, and talk to the students there. I just was meeting with theater yesterday, so we were having some discussions and brainstorms about some things like that. It's certainly here to stay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk a little bit more about, kind of going back to our original topic around there's a lot of clutter, right? And how can we actually break through that clutter? I know you mentioned there's a book called Made to Stick by the Heath brothers that you are fond of. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that and how you're implementing that into admissions and marketing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a book I really highly recommend. It was one of those experiences where I picked it up and read it, and you just have this aha moment as every page. And I thought it validated a lot of what I thought we should be doing anyway. The Heath brothers are two very bright individuals. I know one is a professor at Stanford, and the Made to Stick book was the idea that how can you bring your ideas to your audience in such a way that they will be remembered and stay with them. And a lot of really good research-based information that's in the book, and they came up with an easy way for me to remember what they advised. They talk about success, and success is simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional stories. Skip the last S. There was none. And they go through chapter by chapter talking about, using research, explaining how each of these really, it's proven that it'll stick with your audience. They don't speak specifically, this isn't a marketing book. It's a book for anybody that's looking to have their ideas shared. And, in that, they weren't necessarily emphasizing how you break through the clutter. They were, in a way, assuming you had an audience, and they were attentive. However, a number of their ideas, and maybe perhaps all of them, really actually do also work at the very top end of the funnel. As you go down through them, a couple that I would guess I would pick out that I really like. Like I've already said, I really like that unexpected and unexpectedly good. And that you need to think about that a lot as you do your outreach. The other one I really like, and this goes back to the Luther College experience, is that credible. And our audience, as they're out searching for their colleges higher in the funnel, well, what gives them credibility? Rankings come with a lot of credibility, but not all of us have those rankings. Mm-hmm. Brand recognition. If I know you, it turns out I also think you're better. If I've heard of you, you must be good. And we've done internal research even in our colleges where we discovered that the brand recognition really helped with the brand reputation. Right. But for the rest of us, we need to rely on that word of mouth marketing. And how can we get our satisfied current customers, former customers, to be ambassadors for us? That's not necessarily new, but one of the things I think that's happened with the prevalence of new communication channels and social media is that it's become more and more important, and it's provided us more opportunities to do this. How do we grab onto that? In our case, and probably in case of a lot of colleges like ours, we end up having what I would call brand islands. We have a separate brand in college or high school A than we do in high school B.
Right. Because
of that word of mouth marketing. So how do you focus on those brand islands and really continue to build what's happening in, if A is doing great, how do you parlay that over into school B, right?
Got it. Love that. And so, as a smaller institution, are you saying if you're a smaller institution or a regional institution, focusing on what you called like brand A, brand B segments and segmenting those out is a good place to start maybe, and not looking so... You were saying your daughter was getting outreach from schools thousands of miles away, right? Instead of focusing on that kind of outreach, really start with where you're at right now locally and starting in segments as well.
Yeah. Well, everything, comes down to opportunity cost, and we have limited time and we have limited funds. And so we have to make really difficult decisions about what we're going to do. We would love to be able to have really strong evidence, really solid data to back up every single thing we do.
Right.
It turns out we don't. And so we have to make some of these decisions based on, I think, qualitative research and rely on our expertise. And again, what I've found is that because I've had a recruitment territory of my own all along, is that if I can get my students from a particular school to champion us, or in this case, I recruited for some years in Alaska, and we just really skyrocketed because we had the Alaskans just, and not surprisingly, Alaskans claim their state, right? Even though it's twice the size of Texas.
Right.
But it means something if you're from Alaska and you get an outreach from Alaskan, right? In addition to that, when we're speaking about Alaska, I worked with the Alaska Native population, and really rather incredible experiences as to how small and close-knit the network is, even though they could perhaps live hundreds and hundreds of miles away. I had a case of one student from a remote village, and I asked a father who had twins here to perhaps reach out to that student, again, hundreds of miles away, and he said, "Oh, yeah, I know that family."
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So
it's not, in some ways, it's not as, there's not as many bells and whistles in this kind of outreach. There's not going to be as many attractive charts, quite as much data available. It's not the shiny new thing. It's hard work, but in the end, for instance, I can tell you that a few years back I did a research on our search outreach and the results of that, and I looked at students.
Do you mean like keyword research on Google?
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, it was our name by.
Oh, name by.
So our prospecting outreach and our name by, and looking at students in our first year incoming class who were either in that name by, or more importantly, that was the first time we heard of them and knew of them. And we're small enough that I can take all that big data and I can drill down until I got 5, 6, 7 students or something that I really wasn't sure what the story was. And I just emailed them and said, "How did you come to know St. Ben's and St. John's and come to be interested in the colleges?" And it really, really turned out, that really affirmed the importance of word of mouth marketing, because that's indeed, while we may have been the first time we heard of them, and it may have been the first time they expressed interest, it was definitely not the first time it was not when they got interested. They had gotten interested previously, and in all these cases, it was really because of the contact. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, just from a different lens, talking from ed tech, like word of mouth is still our biggest driving force. Mm-hmm. And I think in marketing as a whole, word of mouth is still probably going to be the strongest channel for any brand or company, regardless of industry, moving forward. So
right,
I agree with you in that.
Yeah.
How to scale and increase word of mouth is definitely where I think you'll see the easiest or most success.
Yeah. And that really isn't to cast aside the other outreach opportunities. We do an annual survey of our admitted students, and every year they report back that the print and the email were important to them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think that all the channels are siloed, right? I think they all support each other. And I think word of mouth is one of the end result of all the other marketing you're doing, right? Whether it's social media or print or PR, whatever you're doing, it all kind of funnels into a lot of the word of mouth that gets continued on and on again. I love this point that you made before in the past about data. People say data-driven decision-making versus evidence, what you like to call evidence-based decision-making. Do you have an example from higher ed around this and what this means to you as well?
Yeah, and you're going to get me on my soapbox here.
I love soapboxes. Let's get started.
And I get myself in trouble with every place that really wants it loves data-driven individuals, but I think it goes beyond semantics because. And this probably happens in other sectors. I just haven't worked in other sectors. But, we work in higher education. We have research professors one building over doing supposedly good, valid research. And what I find in higher education, this is not just at my colleges, because I go to conferences, I have a lot of connections, is that there ends up just being a misuse, misunderstanding, misinterpretation all along of data. So the data analysis part, we use it oftentimes. You have the fallacies of data and data research, and I can go through those fallacies and just check the box and say, oh my God, yeah. One of them is they're really working to give validity to what action we're taking. And you can massage that data in all sorts of different ways to have it make a pretty darn good chart. But I'm a product of a liberal arts college and a master's in liberal studies, where really in one of my favorite classes was a graduate program where it was the use and misuse of evidence across the disciplines. And so we need to have our critical thinking cap on with the idea that we want to make good, informed decisions. So we're always out there looking for pieces of evidence to help make these decisions. I've actually found in my history that data has helped me better understand, I would say, failures than successes. I sent a publication. I have a really hard time telling you whether that enrolled more students or not, right? But there are items that I've done, outreach, where I've been able to measure it and be able to say, well, that activity didn't work. I'm pretty confident that it didn't work. Let me try to give you or at least one example. Well, let's go back to the search and student outreach. Years ago, I did a kind of a personal professional development experience where I visited a dozen liberal arts colleges out in the Northeast and met with their marketing and communication folks. And it was really, we were more paper driven at that time. So it was interesting. You could go into these offices and pretty quickly you could tell whether they were using one particular search firm or not. And because they had the big book of data. And the data is mesmerizing. But the data is misleading, is misinterpreted, and we just have to have we have to have our safety goggles on as we look at these things. Does that make sense? I know I babbled on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to understand it in my world a little bit, and you can make a data point look one way or the other, just depending on how you frame the story around it.
Right.
And so I understand what you mean, and I agree that like an overemphasis, just data is a number, right? Or it's a measurement at the end of the day. So you have to compare it to things. You have to understand it. You have to make decisions from it, and that's when it becomes an analysis. And I think what I'm hearing is, you're moving just beyond just saying numbers, but like really understanding what's going on is something that we need to work on. That I need to work on to be honest. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm hearing, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to cast out the baby with the bathwater here. This sort of quantitative research is important. We need to understand what we know and understand what we don't know. Be honest about what we know and what we don't know.
Honest, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was Jeff Bezos who said, you do all this data research, you get all this numbers and all this information, and then you get your best minds in a room, and you look at it all, and you make your decision. But it's it helps formulate your steps ahead.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom. Well, Thank you so much for all your insight today. I was wondering where our listeners could reach you as well. Maybe it's a LinkedIn or Twitter or website. Feel free to share any of your networks, and so our audience can connect with you.
Well, I'd say I made it easy by just having a website with my last name, except my last name is Voller-Berdan. But indeed, if you go to Voller-Berdan, I hope it's on my screen right down there, .com, that's a good place to start. I have the other related links right there. Don't expect to be anything dazzling when you get there. It's a simple WordPress page, but it's just a holding spot for me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Cheryl.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And all you listeners, thanks again for joining us. Please check us out on the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.